You never really retired. You moved on from one thing to another, and after your period in the diocese here, you found yourself in Africa, in Tanzania. Tanzania, it's surrounded by countries that have had turbulent times. Rwanda, Burundi, Democratic Republic of Congo. Did you find an element of peace in Tanzania?
Tanzania is a very, very quiet, calm country. Very quiet indeed. And so they welcomed refugees by the thousands from other countries into northern Tanzania. Very poor country. When the then president expelled all the white people because they were running the show, he got rid of all of them and then invited them back on his terms. They were poor, struggling, and I went there. Simply, I'd said at one point to the Archbishop that I'd met at Anglican Consultative Council, I said, you know, if you can ever think of anything I can do to help, say so. I thought he might invite me out for a couple of weeks to do something. And he said, oh yes, would you come and be principal of St. Mark's Theological College? So I did. And I said, but Denise is a nurse, what does she do? Oh, she'll be the college nurse. Well, that's what she became. And a nurse to anyone that cared to come in from elsewhere. And that was 2 wonderful years. It got this diocese out of my system. I didn't have any sense of ownership of this diocese anymore. In fact, when Dennis Popple phoned me to say, guess who's been elected bishop? I said, oh, have you had an election? I was out of it. So, yeah, it was 2 great years. Then I went back, when that was over, I went back on an annual basis to do a training program for new bishops. And that was fun too. They came from all over Africa for a month at a time to do studies. They were tremendous times.
As a member of the Anglican Consultative Council, you would have been aware of the vast difference of opinions among the primates of the different communions.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think the gift of the Anglican Consultative Council was that it gave me a sense of the communion that I'd never had. I think it's always a pity. I was talking earlier to Clifford when we were driving down this morning. There's such a danger of seeing just the parish, or maybe parish and diocese. It's a bit of a stretch to know the whole Anglican Church of Canada, but the communion is like another planet for most people. Now, I had the tremendous privilege of seeing the whole of the communion, traveling to parts of it, meeting all kinds of people, clergy and laity as well, from all over the world, and getting a sense of the wide range of thinking. There's no point in saying my way is the only way. You recognize there are all kinds of ways of looking at things. And that was a great experience. That was 9 years, just before I retired.
Mrs. Hambidge has been more active, I believe, than most Episcopal spouses. Her work in nursing in Tanzania, her serving as a director of the Primates World Relief and Development Fund, traveling with you throughout the world, raising funds for children in Bangladesh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would want to say much more than that if I could about Denise, because right from day one, she's been just an incredible support. She has never ever tried to be the assistant curate or the assistant rector or the assistant bishop or the assistant anything. She's simply been what to my mind has been an incredible example of a layperson completely engaged in ministry, supportive of me, but not simply an attachment to my ministry. Some people used to complain that she didn't travel around with me to all the parishes. She never did. She'd come to ordinations, she'd attend as an observer at every synod. but she was not simply a little attachment to me to be toted around. She had a very genuine ministry of her own, and still does.
She was given a charming nickname in Caledonia, translates as Daughter of the Moon.
Yeah. We don't know why they chose that name. They gave names because the names signified something. And I was adopted when I was consecrated, given a name, and she was just a couple of days later was given the name Daughter of the Moon. Yep. But they loved her. I mean, she fitted into that culture and society admirably, and just seemed to be relaxed among First Nations people, and they loved Mama Denise.
Do you still have a network of communications with people in the various places you served, from your time in the military, your period in Caledonia, your time in Tanzania? Are you in touch with people from?
Well, I'm in touch with one person I was with in the army. We're both getting on in years. He's exactly, I think, 2 days younger than I am. But we're still in touch at Christmas, that's about all. Not any from Cassia anymore. They've all dispersed. Smithers, again, no, they've gone. Fort St. John, not so much, just occasionally. One person who now lives in Victoria that we see from time to time. Africa, two of my former students are now bishops in Tanzania. So they email me and keep in touch with me, and we have little chats together on emails. So that's a contact. And of course, the woman that helped Denise form a nursery school in Tanzania, she still keeps in touch with us. She's still running nursery schools. She's an Anglican nun, pretty old by now, I suspect, but she keeps in touch. I keep in touch with the old Archbishop who was there when I went there, but not many. You see, most of us, well, all of us are getting older, and you eventually you get to the point where people are not writing anymore.
Well, a most interesting conversation. You've worked with a number of interesting people over the years, and you may want to mention memories of some of them. You've talked with John Frame from time to time, who was himself a controversial figure.
Yeah, he never accepted the ordination of women to the priesthood, doesn't still, although his granddaughter is a priest. But he and I were very, very close. He was the rector of Burns Lake Mission to the Lakes District, which was 12 congregations. When clergy tell me they can't manage 2 services on a Sunday, I like to remind them that I think of John Frame looking after 12 congregations, and they were thriving. They were not just part-time hobbies. They were working parishes. So he and I would go on, and I was in the next parish, Smithers, Telquaquick, Houston. That was just 4 congregations. And we fought like cats and dogs over theology. We argued about churchmanship. We disagreed about women to the priesthood. He doesn't believe computers are here to stay, and I do. But we're close friends. That's what the church is all about. So, yeah, he's an outstanding person. One group that we haven't mentioned at all, and I really would, I mean, they're so much part of my life that I'd hate to see them overlooked. That's my children. Carol, Stephen, and Graham. 3, they're married. Carol lives in England with her husband and family. Two grandchildren there, and a great-grandson. Haven't met him yet. We've only seen him on Skype, and he doesn't like us. I mean, he doesn't look at us at all. I don't know why, because we're pretty good-looking. And then we've got 2 sons in Calgary. One is a producer in a radio station. The other is a priest in a parish in Calgary Diocese. They each have 2 children, So they're very special to Denise and to me. They mean a great deal to us, and they're such a delight. So I'd hate to think that my life ignored them, because I regret that, looking back, my ministry was costly in the sense that I had to be away a lot, when I would have, looking back, wish I'd spent more time at home with them. If I had any regrets of the last 60 years, that would be my first thought, that I wish now I'd spent more time with the children. And thankfully Denise brought them up in a beautiful way, so all their good qualities, I might claim them, but in fact they belong to Denise.
Well, speaking of regrets, or having had some or not having had some, looking back over these decades, what do you see as some of the great successes, and what do you see as perhaps not personal failures, but perhaps church failures?
I don't know about successes. There were some highlights through the years that stand out for the church and for me personally in the process. Anglicans in mission was an incredible experience for the whole of the Anglican Church of Canada. That was tremendous. The debate over ordination of women to the priesthood, that was a cut and thrust. Took ages. I mean, we really went hammer and tongs at this, arguing back and forth, and eventually reaching to the point where we say, now we believe God is leading us, and dragged us kicking and screaming into that next step. And some screamed for a long time, and some hadn't any screams left. One or two still holding out, but that was a highlight, not an easy one. The beginning of the debate on the gay situation, whether it wasn't talking about blessing same-sex relationships, it was talking about allowing that they were part of the church. Those were the first discussions, and they went on at length in the House of Bishops. And all kinds of debates and arguments, and gradually a movement that said we've got to face the reality where God is dragging us into a new concept of humanity. So that was a highlight. Highlight in this diocese was Anglicans Stewards in Action, when for the first time we began to think of stewardship in terms of mission rather than money. When we began to see that what we do for God's mission is the key that sets the tone, and incidentally, it's got to be paid for. Parishes all across this diocese responded in an incredible way, when for the first time some of them realized that it was what they do as mission and not merely surviving as a parish. That was a highlight.
The most interesting review of those years, and perhaps we'll return to this conversation in a moment. Your Grace, you've worked with a number of extremely interesting people, various personalities. When one is younger, one looks at the clergy and assumes that they're all more or less the same because they seem to be wearing the same clothes. Yeah. But in fact, they're very, very diverse personalities, and you have known many of them, and bishops, archbishops, deans. You've worked with several deans in your career, and quite different men in many ways. Mm-hmm. One I believe you were especially close to, had a good friendship with, was Jim Cruikshank, later Bishop of Caribou, when there was still a Diocese of Caribou. Yeah,
Jim was a long-time friend, long before he became a bishop. I met him when he was the first time I met him was when he was a newly appointed director of Sorrento. And from then on, we met from time to time, and we gradually started to realize we had a good friendship. And he used to invite me to work at Sorrento frequently. And then he moved to VST, and I, again, was in touch with him fairly regularly. We became good friends. We met and talked about the life of the church and the life of theological education and so on. And then he became dean, and again we worked extremely closely. He was an excellent advisor. I've never ever heard Jim criticize somebody. He could always find something about them to respect and honor. And sometimes when I've been dousing someone with my, not condemning, but criticizing severely, he would gently move me over into recognizing that there was good there. I had a tremendous regard for him. He was a mentor, but a friend, great at the cathedral. He and I worked very well together. We shared services at the cathedral very happily, and he had a great sense of humor. So I loved Jim. Great loss to me personally when he died. Great loss to the church when he died, but an incredible person, incredible Bishop of Caribou. He was destroyed by the treatment that the First Nations had received at the hands of the church, and it really, really damaged him in his whole life. It was never quite the same after the way that event worked out with the First Nations people of Caribou. So, great miss.
You mentioned Sorrento Center. You've conducted courses there, and you have conducted courses around the country on various subjects, often on stewardship. There's a video series showing you conducting workshops on stewardship, and you preach frequently, take services, serve in an Episcopal category from time to time at special events. So retirement has never been part of your life.
I don't believe priests retire. They may change their style of ministry or amount of ministry. I think, as far as I can see, ordination is a lifelong commitment to minister as much as one is able to. So I don't think I do more than I need to do. I just want to do as much as I can. I enjoy being invited to lead stewardship weekends. I've done that a lot. I mean, I guess I had a kind of conversion to stewardship at some point and started to share it with other people. And so I worked with across the country in many, many dioceses and in the Lutheran Church. I enjoyed working with Lutheran Church because they are very much aware of stewardship and wanted to encourage more and more in understanding of it. And then I made a contact with the stewardship network of the Episcopal Church, the TENS. And so they invited me to do a number of conferences in the States. I got a free trip to Honolulu at one point. I loved that. I recommend that to anybody. Where a whole weekend and mostly evenings, and so in the daytime I was drifted around Honolulu and I had a wonderful time. Well, I could have stayed there. In fact, I was surprised that the priest I was staying with, a young man who was saying, "Oh, I wish I could get out of here." And I said, "Well, let me know." But yeah, it was good. I even had one trip to England on stewardship when the Episcopal Church and the Anglican Church of Canada and the Church of England got together and did a stewardship program lasting about 4 or 5 days near Norwich in England.
Do you have memories of Lambeth?
Yeah, I had 2 Lambeths. The first one, I was invited to be, appointed to be chair of one of the sections. There are 3 sections, and I chaired one of them on ministry, baptismal ministry to ordination. That was a great experience because we had to write the report afterwards and met lots of interesting bishops from all over the world. It's much too big a body to do anything. They talk about getting to know everybody. You get to know about 10 bishops out of 500 or so. I have just good memories of Lambeth. Donald Coggan was the Archbishop of Canterbury.
On both occasions?
No, he was the first one, and he had been my principal at Theological College, so I knew him very well. The next one was Robert Runcie. I think he's my hero among Archbishops of Canterbury. The next one, George Carey, not so much. He and I didn't get along.
Quite different men.
Yeah, I thought so. One was, Robert was much more, I guess I could approach him because he was prepared to listen to other people and not simply insist he knew all the answers. And I appreciated that. When he came to this diocese, he came to explain, as Archbishop, why he disapproved of ordination of women to the priesthood. We had a meeting, and just about all the clergy turned up, and he listened and talked and listened and did a lot of listening and said, I've got to rethink this. And I thought, that's for the Archbishop of Canterbury to say he's got to rethink something, that's a step forward. And he did. He changed his mind. So I had great regard for him.
Well, you and he had not dissimilar backgrounds. Both had military backgrounds.
Well, he'd been a senior commander in the army. I never was. So our paths would never have crossed.
Did you ever talk to him about his hobby of raising pigs?
Yes, I did. And he said he didn't know why anybody made such a fuss about it. Pigs are delightful animals. And he started giving me instruction on all the different kinds of pigs. And I, frankly, I'm not very interested. I'm a people person, not a pig person.
Most interesting.
Yeah.
A most interesting conversation with you, Archbishop. This has been a conversation recorded February 20th, 2017, at the Synod Office of the Diocese of New Westminster, located in the St. John's Shaughnessy building. Producers of this were Randy Murray, the Communications Director, and Archivist Melanie Delva. We had notes from Archdeacon Ron Harrison, Conrad Gelke, Neil Adams, the videographer is Cliff Capriani. I'm Lyndon Grove.